My name is Helena Reckitt. I'm the Senior Curator of Programs here at the Power Plant. I'd like to welcome you to this international lecture series by the esteemed Canadian artist Michael Snow. So none of these events would be possible without our funders, and we are extremely indebted to the Canada Council for the Arts, the Ontario Arts Council, and the Toronto Arts Council. Also our partners here at Harbourfront Centre, including the great team supporting this event tonight. Thank you. Our public programs are generously funded by our primary education sponsor, CIBC Wood Gundy, which has been a long supporter of the Power Plant, and the supporter of our international lecture series, lead donor, is the J.P. Bickle Foundation. So thank you very much to both of them. The exhibition Recent Snow is supported by Rogers and the Drake Hotel, and that will continue at the gallery until March the 7th, alongside an exhibition of sculpture called Nothing to Declare. So the talk tonight will be moderated by someone who I'm sure is known to many of you, Louise Dompierre. Louise is the president and CEO of the Art Gallery of Hamilton, which she joined in 1998. And before that, she was the associate director as well as the chief director at the Power Plant. At the Power Plant, Louise was one of the curators of the ambitious 1994 retrospective, the Michael Snow project, which she worked on with colleagues at the Art Gallery of Ontario. And before that, she worked at the Agnes Etherington Art Centre, as well as the Canada Council for the Arts. In 1998, Dompierre was made a Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres. So that's a great honour. I just want to mention one more thing, which is our next in this series, in the ILS, is with Thomas Hirschhorn. That will be on May the 19th. And all ILS lectures are free to members. So if you had to buy your ticket tonight, you're not investing your money wisely, because for a little bit more, you could get a membership and then come to all of these lectures for free. So I'd just like to hand things over to Louise, and thanks for coming.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm truly delighted to be here with you this evening and to be back at the Power Plant, where I spent many wonderful years. But I'm especially pleased to have the opportunity to have this conversation with Michael Snow, whom I've not had the opportunity to see for a good number of years. I've known Michael Snow for a long time, and I've also had the pleasure of working with him on a number of occasions. But I still feel challenged to find the right way and the right words to introduce him. How can one possibly begin to introduce someone as prolific and as talented as Michael Snow? Perhaps I could paraphrase his own introduction to music sound, one of the books published as part of the Michael Snow project in 1994, and say, and I'm quoting here, "This introduction will attempt, period. This introduction is, period. Somehow, period. Tentative, question mark?" Well, as you can see, my own introduction is tentative and certainly incomplete, and hardly an adequate summary of such an amazing career. As an independent or experimental filmmaker, Michael is one of the world's most influential and respected individuals. His work has been the subject of numerous retrospectives and has been shown in major festivals around the world, including our own Toronto International Film Festival. Few, if any, in the film world hasn't heard of La Région Centrale or Wavelength, a film designated as a masterwork by the Audiovisual Preservation Trust of Canada and named as one of the Village Voice critics' list of the 100 best films of the 20th century. Snow's importance and production as a filmmaker would suffice in itself to qualify him as one of our most successful artists. And the same can be said of his career as a musician and sound artist. Whether as a member of the Artists Jazz Band, CCMC, or as a pianist or trumpeter, Michael has performed solo and with other musicians in North America, Europe, and Japan. He has also released several albums since the mid-1970s. In this, as in other aspects of his career, Michael's accomplishments are numerous, enough to fulfill a career in and by itself. But Michael Snow is also a writer, and many of the most insightful comments about his work come from him. One of the ones that always struck me is what he wrote about his walking woman works. My paintings are done by a filmmaker, sculpture by a musician, films by a painter, music by a filmmaker, paintings by a sculptor, sculpture by a filmmaker, films by a musician, music by a sculptor. Sometimes they all come together. Also, many of my paintings have been done by a painter, sculpture by a sculptor, films by a filmmaker, music by a musician. There is a tendency towards purity in all of these media as separate endeavors. In a nutshell, this is Michael Snow. His 50-year-plus career has been recognized widely with awards and degrees, including the Molson Prize, Companion of the Order of Canada, Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres, the first Governor General's Award in Visual and Media Arts. All these, plus honorary doctorates from the Emily Carr Institute, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, the University of Toronto, the University of Victoria, Brock University, and in 2004, the l'Université de Paris I, Panthéon-Sorbonne, awarded him an honorary doctorate. The last artist to receive it was Picasso. And of course, Michael has also received many film awards and other forms of recognition. As a visual artist, Michael has participated in some of the most important exhibitions of the last 50 years and still continues to do so. His work was included in the shows marking the reopening of both the Centre Pompidou in Paris in 2000 and MoMA in New York in 2005. Most certainly, without his two major public commissions in Toronto, at the Sky Dome and at the Eaton Centre, Toronto would lose visual interest. Recently, however, and so far unbeknownst to him, Michael Snow was also paid the highest compliment an artist can receive. Returning from viewing his current show at the power plant, our new and young curator of contemporary art indicated that one of her priorities would be to recommend the acquisition of one of the works in the current power plant show, a spectacular show, by the way. I've just seen it, and it's really, I think, incredible. She said this passionately and with conviction, unaware that I was going to introduce Michael this evening. The inclusion of Snow's work in the 2006 Whitney Biennial is another testimony to the continuing relevance of Snow today for young art practitioners and for all those of us who have known him for years. This is one of the best compliments we can pay an artist. It is certainly the one that attests most strongly to the enduring quality of Michael Snow's art. Please join me in welcoming Michael Snow.
Louise, I value your judgment and taste, so I'm impressed by me. Thank you. That was.
Well, I think we should thank Michael, really, because I can't, as I say, I've just seen your show tonight, and, you know, we were talking just before the start of this, and I'm thinking of this window piece with the curtain flapping and the sound, and I think it's one of your very best work. It's really superb. And then the piano piece, I mean, it's really hard to choose because you just go from one to the other and you want to return all the time. So what brought you suddenly to make all these great pieces, Michael?
Well.
Not that you haven't before.
Well, the show consists of work that hasn't been shown in Toronto before, and so it was a wonderful opportunity. I guess, the oldest one is 10 years old, I guess, and some of them, the tabletop peeps, Serve to Serve, and piano sculpture were all done in November, so they're pretty new. But each one has its own history in a certain sense, or reasons why I decided to try to do that. I haven't used, for example, my own piano playing in a concentrated sense in any other works before, and it's something that's been simmering in my mind that maybe I should do something that. And I have developed these ways of playing the piano, which I use sometimes when in music with other people, that are very well, they're very aggressive in some ways. They're not digital in the old sense. They're manual.
Yeah.
And I just thought it might be interesting to concentrate on those things in a piano piece, because they are gestures that are very much like the kinds of gestures that one uses in making things, like hammering, sawing, sanding, and that's what all of these gestures, the glissandi and so forth, are all like making something. So in the middle of the room, you're in this sound thing that's being made around you.
Yeah.
So I guess they all have their own background of some kind. And also, I keep on trying different techniques that I haven't tried before. Although the piece that's upstairs called Stürti uses superimposition in a way that I'd never used before. And another thing about it that's kind of interesting, I guess, is that it's really the only narrative work I've ever done. And that was deliberate, it was conscious. People sometimes attribute narrative to some of my films, or my work, which I don't quite agree with. So I thought, well, maybe I should really try to do something that tells a story. So that's part of the background of that one.
So is this the beginning of narrative filmmaking?
No, I won't do that again.
No.
No, it's having an idea and trying to see what will come of it. The landscape film, condensation, or not film, it's actually it's Blu-ray actually, so it's very modern. Anyway, it was done by a time-lapse apparatus on a digital still camera, from which, putting it together at 24 frames, we made speeded up motion, which is, excuse me, something that technically I'd never done before and wanted to do, and now it's done.
You can go on to something else. Yeah. Well, I seem to remember when we did the Snow Project in 1994, at that time you were painting, weren't you? Is my memory correct?
In 92, 93 I did paint,
yeah,
yes.
You did a lot of paintings. Yeah. And so this is the first time since 94 that Toronto really has a chance to see a number of your works together. Is that correct?
We were talking about this a little bit. For the last, 20 years, I guess, I've been really active elsewhere. I mean, I live in Toronto, but I hardly ever show here. So I've been, mostly in Europe, mostly Paris and Brussels and Berlin. But I've been in shows all over the world, and it continues to happen. So that there are new things that I've shown elsewhere that I'd never got around to showing here. And so the show that's on now is a chance to, for me, it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to show all these things together that are new.
Yes.
I wanted to talk about the old days a little bit because we co-curated my exhibition here, and I have images of some of the things that were in the show at the power plant, and it covered a wide range of mediums. Rather than recent snow is all projection works, but in the '94 show there was photographic work and sculpture, and there was a music room which had several CD players that you could listen to my music.
That's right.
And then you wrote a wonderful text in one of the books. And that's another thing that was amazing about that show, is that 4 books about my work were published in relation to it. And one of them I am forever grateful to you for, because you called attention to my writing, which had been separated. You know, I'd write a statement of this kind, or I'd write something like this, and I never kind of thought of it as a group. And you suggested that I put everything together and I will look at it with the idea of publishing it. And so eventually my collected writings was published, and that was your idea. Good idea.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I'd always been impressed by your writing, and you know, I refer to a quote from the much earlier days of the Walking Woman Works exhibition, where we had some of your writing in that publication as well, and that's when I began
in Kingston.
Paying attention. That's right, in Kingston. But the power plant show that we did in collaboration with the Art Gallery of Ontario was quite a project. It was, there were 3 curators involved and many participants. Am I forgetting? 3 curators. Dennis Reed, Philip Monk, and myself. Yeah, I think that was it in terms of the curators. And everyone worked on various sections of the publication with Bruce Mao, I believe. That's right. So for you, you know, when an artist, I think, receive an exhibition of this on that scale, did it have an impact in terms of how you thought about your work, or in terms of how what kind of development happened after that? Because you had an opportunity for the first time to really see a huge number of your works together, and see various interpretations of your work at the same time. So what was your response to that? Do you want to share that with us after the show?
Well, obviously it was a wonderful honor and a wonderful chance to see all this stuff brought together, which had got scattered to various locations. I guess I was a little bit worried that it seemed to mark an end.
Yes. Well, you see that it didn't.
But it didn't.
It didn't, no.
See, I don't know what else I can say. I mean, it really was fantastic to be able to, and sometimes I saw connections that I didn't think existed because I was able to compare things. Actually, that's something that is interesting, because I have worked and I do work in a lot of different mediums, and in doing these shows, and especially in the catalogs, there was a tendency for the curators to stay within the bounds of what had been decided to be their area. Usually it was chronological.
Right.
And so almost inevitably, hardly anybody tried to connect one medium with another medium, except for Bruce Elder. We did a written conversation, which is in the music sound book. And he was the only one of all the people that brought up connections that he saw between what I do in different mediums. And in some cases, what he said was surprising to me, because I didn't think that was so, but then I was convinced. because I just, I don't really care whether they relate or not. I'm just try to do something I hope will be interesting. So I think that's about all I could say about that. Oops.
So do you want to go on to your slides, or do you want to continue?
Yes, I guess I have a whole bunch of slides that I'd like to show. Some of which were in the '94 show, and some of which are have some connections with some of the work that's in the current show, but they are mostly photographic works, and I think when I try to lecture, I'd like to have an example that is enough of a clue for you to be able to understand what I seem to be talking about. And with moving image works, trying to talk about them is really difficult. I don't like showing excerpts, so that, for example, at the screenings that are going to take place, like the La Région Centrale tomorrow, I will be happy to introduce and answer questions. So tonight I'm not showing anything, any video, and I'm showing works that are static, because I think that we can have a clearer idea of what's being represented than making excerpts from moving things.
Okay, so I'll leave the stage to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to see you go.
I'll come back.
Yes, do. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, if we could just have this light. Yeah, the first one is, oh yeah. This is called Egg. It was done in 1985, and it's a hologram. And in the '94 show, it was the first thing that one saw coming into the power plant, just at the head of that long gallery. And this is a particular position of photographing this work, because there turned out, when we made it, there turned out to be my shadow, the shadow of my hands on the plate. So they it's a nice, interesting thing that happened. It's kind of lucky. And it makes a plane where the actual hologram is, but the space that you see is behind it. And I'm cracking an egg, and I don't know whether you can make it out, but the yolk is in the air, and it's on its way down to a real frying pan. So it's a stop motion thing, and the illusion of three-dimensionality is really quite strong. Then this is a quite big piece in using the old measurements. It's 20 feet by 8 feet by 30 inches. And it's called Rediffus, and it was done in '86. And it belongs to the Hamilton Gallery. It was donated to them right after the '94 shows. And it's a two-sided thing, and it's really like a kind of exhibition in itself. So the Rediffus, the name, means that it sort of plays on it being an edifice or a building. And some of the windows on that building are open, so to speak. And it uses many different mediums. There are, let's see, each one of these sort of apertures has a different image, a different type of image. Let's see. There are There are backlit transparencies, holograms, and three-dimensional sort of constructions. The flames at the bottom is a backlit transparency, and up in the top corner is a red light bulb within a kind of a black box. So there are connections between things on each side. They might change mediums, but they might be the same thing depicted. And so it is a work that is in the round and doesn't have any kind of denouement or what's the word? Sort of closure. Here there's the bottom image is a little room made with a light behind it and with cutout figures in it. And above it is a hologram of the French flag. And of course, a photograph doesn't really show what it does, but it appeared to stick out about 4 or 5 inches from the wall that it's depicted as being on. And this is the top image is a drawn hologram of a suicide. And again, the photograph can't really show you the space that's involved, but the falling figure is way out in front of the woman on the balcony. So there's a bit of play with the building idea in many different ways. The furthest one is a construction of people arriving on an elevator, and it also works with red and red things like the red shoes in the bottom and a red fox in green. That's a hologram. The space at the far side is sort of whittled out of styrofoam, and it goes from one side to the other, so you can see right through it. Oops. Now this is a hologram of obviously a kind of still life scene, but the actual scene is on the other side of this big structure. So you see it as depicted and also the real thing. This is another hologram work, which you might see at first this way, and you might just go right by. But if you did go up and have a look at it, you'd see this, and it looks like a kind of abstract geometric sculpture. But then if you look down inside it, you see a woman seated in that space, and it's life-size. There's room for somebody to be in there. And she's looking at a little hand mirror, which does reflect her, but seeing holograms, to really get something out of them, you have to move around quite a bit. And if you move, in this case, to sort of look in different directions, excuse me, you will see the image in the mirror change just as it would in real life. So it's kind of an interesting thing, it seems to me, that it's very mysterious because there's this space in which there is this quite convincing depiction of someone. This is called Sync. It was done in 1970, and it's a Carousel Slide piece. Starting in '67, I got interested in trying to do moving image things in a gallery context. The first of these sort of gallery installation films, it was an 8mm film, was called Little Walk, and it was a walking woman thing I did in '65. But in this case, it was 80 tray slides. And also, it's one of my attempts to work with light. So in this piece has a static photo, which is 63 by 64 centimeters, and beside it are projected the slides, 80 slides. This is the photograph, and it's of this horrible sink in my studio on Canal Street in New York in 1970. I was really messy, that's for sure. I wouldn't do that now. But I didn't really prepare it. I just kind of caught it unawares, and I thought it was very interesting that it was all referring to painting, but it wasn't painting, and I thought I should take this a step further and in a way make it become a kind of painting. So I set up a couple of lights, and with colored gels on the lights, I changed the illumination of the sink and took slides of them all. So when you see, now what you're seeing here is much bigger than the actual work, but it's really what the work looks like because it is a projection in light. So it's pretty close to what the other things I've showed you are representations, but this one is really the work. So each one had a different illumination, with the idea that eventually that would be projected as a colored light depiction. And so there ended up being quite a terrific variety in these things, depending on how I illuminated them. And that just happened. I mean, there's been no sort of doctoring it in developing or anything like that. Sometimes it gets kind of cleaned up by the light. Now, this is called Plus tard, or later en anglais. It was done in 1977. And in the 1994 show, it was upstairs where my film Stürti is right now. And it's made to be on 4 walls. And there's 25 individual frames. And so this was an installation, I think, in Montreal at the Musée des Beaux-Arts. So, okay, there's these long views, and it is a sequential thing, reading from left to right, and so starting with that set of things, it's a number of photographs that I took in what was then the Group of 7 room at the old National Gallery. And the photographs are framed in these very, very heavy black frames, and the total dimension is 86 by 108 centimeters. So what I did is I went around the room, and this is the next one. So you can see, I think, that it is that painting, but with the eye or the camera, not the eye, let's say the camera, moving fast over it, and you can see what's coming up. That it's this. So another detail in it is that each photograph is a slightly different size depending on how distant I was from what was photographed, or how distant the camera was from what was photographed. And those photographs are suspended between two sheets of plexi, so that you see the wall of the room that they are in, the pieces in, behind them. So here there's been a succession of going to the corner of the room and then going away from there at a slightly different speed and to this one, which is even faster. So I thought of these panning movements as being like paint strokes, so that I was trying to mix the colors in the paintings in some cases and see what would happen to a photographic mixture. And I found out that, or had found out that with the proper time exposure, I could move the camera such that if I stopped and started at different speeds, there'd be an effect that it was a little bit like a superimposition, but in fact was just done in camera. You know, so there's quite a lot of variety to the panning that I did, because of it not it being different speeds, but also because of stopping and starting sometimes. This is a beautiful painting by J.H. MacDonald called The Solemn Land. And I just moved a little tiny bit, and I really kind of like it as a variation on what is a very nice painting. So the thing, I guess, is important is this work. The subject is important, but of course, it's what I've tried to do with the camera as a kind of brush-like tool. That's the most important thing, to make these kind of unique photographs. So here we're at the corner, another corner of the room, and this is a nice sort of passage here because it's on its way over. I like the shapes in this one, the shape of the light, and also the painting that's coming up. So this is getting closer, and it's a little bit clearer. And this is this. I forget what this is called, but it's by Lauren Harris. And in this case, I moved twice, as I mentioned, so that there's a kind of a super of the wood stump, which is actually formally appropriate to the painting as a variation on it. That's my shadow. And this is a very, very badly lit, sort of raking light Tom Thomson. And that's moving away from it. And this is moving over towards the jack pine. Excuse me. And again, I really am pleased with the effect here of the bit of panning that I did in photographing this very well-known painting. In fact, it's a very, perhaps too stylized painting, and this is kind of a criticism of it. That's a very nice painting by Tom Thomson, Petawawa Gorges. And that's just moving away and moving away out of focus and faster. This is jumping to Dela, which was done in 1971, and it was in the 94 shows at the Art Gallery of Ontario. It belongs to the National Gallery, and this was its first installation at the National Gallery in 71. There are actually 4 monitors, and it has a black and white video camera on it, and the machine, it is a machine, moves, excuse me, moves the camera in totally circular movements in such that over a period of time it will image everything that it can see, which will include the monitors and the audience, if there is one, and it's let's see. It's as if you're watching a kind of robot artist make a drawing, because you see what the camera sees on the monitors, and you see where it's pointed, but the camera sees it in its way, and keeps on, excuse me, moving around. The machine was originally conceived to make La Région Centrale, which is being shown tomorrow night at the AGO, and to make a kind of long story short, I wanted to find a way to move the camera in totally circular or orbital movements without photographing whatever was moving it. And I investigated what was available, and of course there are some fantastic cranes and things like that made for making movies. But I couldn't find anything that at some point wouldn't photograph whatever was holding it up. So I started to try to think of how to do such a thing, but I'm not an engineer. And I looked for someone who could solve how to make this thing, and had the good luck to meet a guy named Pierre Abalou, who was working at the National Film Board in Montreal. And he was working on modifying cameras and that kind of stuff for the film board. Anyway, he figured out a way to do it, and he built this machine with which I made the film. But an odd thing happened, which is that it was made to be invisible, and I found that watching it move was really beautiful, or at least its movements were beautiful. And it made me think that maybe I should do something else with the machine. So I made this piece. This is called intérêt, or interest in French. excuse me. It was done in 1983 for an exhibition of a sort of history of video art in Charleroi, which is in Belgium. There are 20 monitors in a row, and what I did is I put a camera in the place where people pay to get a ticket, and so I videoed the exchange of money and the ticket over each day. But I divided up the number of days that the exhibition was on such that the monitors gradually filled up during the duration of the exhibition. In this case, you can see that there are 2 monitors working, but the others are blank. So for a couple of days, it was just 2 monitors with 18 blank monitors, and each wasn't every day because I forget how it divided up, but at any rate, gradually the monitors were showing what had been filmed of these exchanges, and at the very end of the exhibition, they were all full. I thought I'd show some sculpture because it doesn't get seen that much, and I hope that you'll find it of interest. But Dela was done in '71, so it was done after these things that I'm going to show you now, which were done in 2 of them were done in 1967. This one's called Scope, and there's 2 panels on the wall, and these panels are facing a long rectangular structure. I forget how long it is. Anyway, that's what you get to see from this position. But if you look in it, you see a kind of corridor straight ahead. And in fact, it is a big periscope. But the nice thing that happens is that if someone else is looking in the other way, you see them kind of pictured in the structure. So it's a kind of primitive television, but for some reason there's something kind of affecting about when you see someone else, and then you're looking at each other through the work. So this is part of a set of things that I did, starting with some walking woman works, which I'll show you in '65, I think, that include the spectators, and I did quite a few things that tried to do that. And this is another one called Blind. It's 8 feet by 8 feet by 8 feet. It's 4 kind of screens of different complexity. The one at the end, the one that you can see at the end is in a diagonal. The others are at right angles, and they go to a fairly big size. But you can get inside it, and that shows you the other end, where it's the smallest division. It's extremely variable as you move. Looking through it, it changes a lot. And of course, if someone else is in it, they go through many changes too because of this, the superimposition of all the gridding. It's like a kind of cross-hatching. This is something that's the opposite in a way of blind. It's called Transformer. It's 16 feet long, and it belongs to the Art Gallery of Ontario, but as far as I know, they've never shown it. It's kind of hard to show. It's fragile and dangerous. So what it is a tree that I cut, and I polished the end of it, the extreme end of it, down to a very, very, very fine needle point, and varnished that part. But the refining of it, I guess would be a word that might work, sort of stops. It gradually goes back to being its rough state, with the bark taken off, actually. Well, that's just how it's suspended. But it moves around like a compass, so it's always pointing in different directions. And it's hung at kind of eye-level height. So, this is called Zone. It was done in '83, and it's built on my peripheral vision. It's made of clear plastic, and there's a kind of something that I think is understandable as a kind of eyepiece, so that if you're looking in it, you can see to the extreme ends of this structure. Well, depending on your peripheral vision, I guess. But in looking at it, you're sort of in my peripheral vision. And this is a clay thing called Core, which it's 210 centimeters by 110 centimeters at the bottom. It narrows down. This was done by an expert potter, and unfortunately I can't think of his name. According to my directions, it's exactly, I made a model and he followed that. But he claimed that it was the biggest clay thing that he knew of that had been thrown rather than modeled or cast. And it's really, it relates to the other things in the sense that it suggests that you, the spectator, walk around it and see it. This is not that good a slide, but it's called Seated Sculpture. It was done in 1982. And it was shown here in the 1994 power plant show. And this is a little bit clearer. It's in quite heavy steel, and there's basically 3 different pieces of steel in it. And you can sit on it, and people do. But when you, or you can imagine sitting in it. But if you do, you're surrounded by something that was made by very, very heavy machinery. There's a lot of power that you can sense if you sit in it and look ahead, because the piece that's stretching ahead is well, it's basically one piece, but it's 2 pieces that are folded. No, it's the end of one piece, the ends, plural, of one piece of steel that are folded over each other. So within it, you're looking at the work itself, but you're inside it, which is another different situation to look at something. This is called Correspondence, and it was done in 1970. And it has, oops, on the floor, ah, shit, I'm trying to go back. I'm trying to reverse and it doesn't seem to want to reverse. Oh. There. I just went back to show you that on the floor there's a what was a tape recorder, and this is it's two typewritten letters superimposed one on top of the other with a very, very big, in a very, very big enlargement. Because it's just regular letter-size paper, but it's what was magnified to 1,500 centimeters, and the tape recorder plays the sound of the typing of the two letters, but it plays it the equivalent, it plays it as loud as the photograph is big, which is very loud, and it's very annoying. And it's difficult to show anything else with it. The letters are real letters, and I was a terrible typist. And one of them, I was asked to be in an exhibition at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and sometime in 1970, by mail. And I decided to use my answer. I actually answered and described what I was going to do, and I sent the letter, but that's what one of these letters is. And the other one, coincidentally, is about La Région Centrale, because I finished the editing of it when I was visiting, or being a visiting prof in Halifax. This is correct, believe it or not. It's called imposition, and in fact it's 120 centimeters tall, and it's a color photograph mounted so that it's suspended, and you can see it's a kind of a sheet in a box frame, and it is 3 superimpositions of the floor and the wall, then the sofa, then the 2 people nude, then the 2 people clothed. The woman happens to be Edessa Hendeles. And you can see the way that the man is holding a something or other that they are looking at, and that something or other is a sheet of what must be paper, excuse me, that is the same proportion as the photo of which they are a part, and so it's like the photo before the photo. But anyway, they are looking at it and twisting their heads in that way that one does. I think one does. I mean, that is, I think other people do this to correct something that's being held or placed wrongly. So, and I've had the pleasure of seeing this work being looked at by people and seeing them do exactly the same thing with their heads. So there are several different impositions involved in this piece. But it's really a purely photographic thing because it uses the possibility of laying one image on another image and mixing the color and so forth. This is called Authorization. It was done in 1969. When Polaroids appeared, I thought it was great. And I did 2 or 3 things, no, 4 or 5 things using Polaroids. And no, this is a difficult thing to photograph because it doesn't include the tripod, or you can see that there's somebody there too. That is a mirror, so that wherever it's shown, it will show you or the room that it's in or something like that. At any rate, I wanted to use the fact that you can photograph the Polaroid which you just received, as well as make a new one. So the idea of doing something that's additive, which is the way paintings are made, came up. And so I made a rectangle the size of 4 Polaroids with gaffer's tape on the mirror, and set the camera up in front of it, centered on that rectangle, and took the first photograph. And I mounted that on the mirror, and took a second photograph which included the first, and started to begin obstructing me and the camera. So then in the bottom corner did the next one, and then the 4th one has a little bit of the camera and me peeking out, and the 4th one, which canceled all of my reflection, is put up in the top corner. Sometimes this has been referred to as a self-portrait, but I certainly didn't think of it that way. It's simply that somebody did this, and part of that person is visible. So it gives a kind of a... Photography is not tactile like painting, so it gives a kind of human touch, in a way, to a use of photography. This is called Of a Ladder. It was done in 1970, and it's several black and white photographs, each of which is 28 by 36 centimeters. So I wanted to depict a ladder in a way that was proper to photography, in a sense. So I set the camera up in front of a leaning ladder, and centered it on one of the rectangles made by the rungs, and took an exposure for there. And then I centered on each one of the rectangles and took a photograph. There's a little more optical effect in that space. Oops. This is called Glares. It was done in '73. It's 150 by 100 centimeters. And it's obviously, I guess, another step from Of a Ladder. But also, I wanted to try to work with the light that was necessary, or is necessary, to take a photograph. So in this case, I made a grid of black lines on a white surface, and then set up the camera 1, 2, 3, 4, centered on the 5th row. No, the 4th row, I guess. Yeah, on the 4th. Yeah, the 4th row up. And I took a photograph centered on each one of the rectangles in the grid, but not moving the tripod, just panning up. And in the same way as in the ladder piece, I didn't change the exposure as I went up and as I went down. And then these are not Polaroids. I had the photographs made and mounted them each in the rectangle that it is a photograph of. So it makes this kind of barrel-shaped record of itself. And it's called Glares, which is, I think, kind of a nice title. Sometimes my titles are a bit obscure. But in this case, this isn't obscure, it seems to me. Glare in the sense of looking, but also in terms of, in the other meaning of it, too much light, which happens at the top, because the light which is in the work when it's shown is the same light that I used to make the photographs. And this was another kind of a move from doing glares. It's called Light Blues. It was done in 1974, and it's 183 centimeters by 100. It includes a light with a kind of gel holder which has a gel in it. And I used that, let's see, how can I put this? I made a panel which you see, and the color's really not that bad in this slide. It's a kind of a pale violet blue. Excuse me. And I put different gels in this gel holder and photographed the different projections and different color mixings that happened by doing that. And I took photographs of each one of these things. Then I had the photographs printed, and I mounted them on the panel. And the thing is shown with this light color mixing. It uses a gel that wasn't used in the photographs. If one had the time, and it was bought by some adventurous collectors, Dr. Maillot in Montreal. If you had the time to live with it, you would start to see that the top two rows and the bottom two rows are actually the same colors, but they're reversed. Let's see, so that I'm baffled too. Anyway, it's pretty good. Maybe this is easier. This, oddly enough, is called Door, another good title. And it was done in 1979. It's 229 by 120 centimeters. And so it's a door size, and that was one of the ideas. I was interested in some kind of control of the size of the print, because it seems to me that's something that you can do with photography and have some relationship with what the work is. So in this case, the dimensions of it are a rather typical door size. However, the door, which is a kind of normal size, has this hand which is huge, holding a match. And then if you look a little bit further, you can see that that match is illuminating something which is not a photograph of a door at all. It's a painting of a door. It's a watercolor. And the shadows in the door, like in the mullions, I think that's what they're called, are the kinds of shadows that would be made by illumination where the match is. And so various clues, including the size of the hand, make you, or can make you, kind of zoom in your mind to the actual size of the original, which was a little bit bigger than this bottle. So that in a way the knowledge of what was done is kind of all available and is part, hopefully, of the experience of seeing this thing. So I did a number of things using flames. Once I started getting interested in using the illumination, I thought it might be interesting to do things that contained light in a sense. And yeah, this is called Was Red, and it's 2 meters by 69 centimeters. So it's a kind of decisive moment photograph because the whole thing just went up in flames. And this was the best of 2 or 3 shots I was able to take of the thing burning, which was a piece of colored paper with a kind of a diagram on it. Whoops, what have I done? Maybe that's the end of that. Yeah, that's right. Sorry. No, in my list I have something on it. Okay, whoops. Yeah. This is called Midnight Blue, and it was done in 1974, and it's 76 by 66 centimeters. It's, let me see if I, the color is really not bad. What it is a panel made of very roughly sawn, very roughly cut wood with a little ledge in front of it. And the light blue is paint, acrylic, and the dark blue and the candle are a photograph. And yeah, you can see it a little bit more clearly here. The photograph is of what's underneath it, and you can see that by the way the grain goes through. And what it is a photograph of the blue paint that you see, the blue surface, taken with very little light, basically with the candle which you see in the photograph. So again, it's a kind of stop time thing, but not to do with motion, but to do with what that color looked like under certain light conditions. And the wax of the candle is right in front of where the photograph of the candle is. This has a kind of in memoriam feeling, I guess. The one on the floor is called In Medias Res. It was done in 1998, and it's another thing that's tried to use the size of its subject to determine the size of the print. So it's quite big. It's 3 meters by 2 meters, and it is of these slides you can't really see very clearly, but it was taken with a view camera, like a 4x5 camera, from way up high, and the focus was on the Persian carpet. So it's very, very clear, very sharp. But this is not a very good slide, but I staged this little scene on the carpet with furniture, and there's 3 people, 2 men and a woman sitting. She's not visible, she's seated in the corner. And one of the men is seated and the other one is standing. And the standing one is reaching up towards a parrot, which is flying over them. and everything goes out of focus as it goes higher. That is, but since you're looking at this thing on the floor, it's all really on the same surface as the carpet, which is the truth of all photography, that there's a transformation from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions, which isn't necessarily a factor in looking at them, but I'm trying to make it a factor in some work, and in this case it is, because yeah, but it is interesting that the scene has its own kind of semi-narrative effect, even though you revert to seeing how flat it is, and you read the signals that such and such a thing, I mean, that the lamp, for example, is higher than one of the chairs. Midnight Blue and In Medias Res are both in the Centre Pompidou in Paris. Oh, another hour? Oh, that's too bad. Well, because this was on the wall in the previous one, I thought I should show it. It's called X60 or by 60. It's 1979, and it's 90 by 160 centimeters. And it's kind of hard to see it, but there's a lot of texture in the white. And I think when one sees it, one might see it as an abstract painting of some kind. But I think a closer look will see that it is an enlargement of something that was very small. And it was an enlargement of the words X60 done with a red grease pencil. And it is 60 times the original thing, which was about 5 centimeters wide. So it's something that is an attempt to use enlargement, or the fact that you can dictate the size of the print and make it part of the work. I'm not sure what to do because I wanted to show you everything. Let's see. Well, okay, I think we might be able to do the next one. This is called Conception of Light, and it was done in 1992. This is its first showing at the SL Simpson, which was a nice gallery here in Toronto at that time. And when one entered the room, you would see this very, very big image of an iris. And it's kind of a beautiful thing to see, but when you look the other way, you see that there's another eye, sort of looking at the sort of orange-colored eye, and it's blue. And the two eyes are very, very complementary, not only in terms of color, but this one is very kind of electrical and cosmic, and the other one is very sort of floral and or maybe undersea. So the eyes are amazing, and anyway, it's called Conception of Light. And I've worked with transparencies quite a bit, and this was one of the first of them, 1979, called Shade. And that's a better view of it. It's a photograph of a man standing, it's in sort of life size, the way one might in a gallery looking at something. But the thing about it, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it really is kind of interesting when it happens, is that when you go around to the other side, it's exactly the same. It's a transparency. And they are, and so you find, and I've had this confirmed by some people, that you find that you are expecting to see a face, and you don't. So again, you see a reality of photography. It's extremely thin and is a condensation of 2 dimensions. And this is a very big 8 feet by 16 feet transparency, which was done recently, 2004. And you can't get really any idea what happens to it, but again, you can see 2-dimensionality when you walk around from one side or the other. And if there are other people there, they're in this room with this couple. And the light is interesting because there's a window which is showing a sunset or sunrise, and it's projected on the wall. And of course, the window, which in real life is transparent, is in this work also transparent. So you're looking through it and you see the effects of the light coming through and so forth. But there are a whole bunch of things that happen because of it being transparent. This is called Sleeve. It's 1965, and it's a walking woman work. And it's like a kind of a group show on the wall, but with this wall with a red plastic in it, and you see through it, and the wall stuff has a great deal of variety. But the thing is, it includes photographs, because I started to use photography in 1962. And the red plastic does some kind of amazing things to the color in the things that are on the walls. Some of it completely disappears, and some of it's transformed in a very, very interesting way. And also, it includes spectators if there are any. And this was done that same year in Morningside Heights. It's 1965. And it's a kind of a sculpture. The floor sort of box shape is 290 centimeters. And there's a kind of a trapezoidal painting on the wall, which you might or might not connect. But if you do, and you see one through the other, you have this transformation happens. And also will include spectators if there are spectators. And this was done in 65 too. It's called Scene, S-E-E-N, and it's 218 centimeters. And it's sort of a beam, or it's sort of what happens as an image is on its way to your little eye. This is, that's it from the front. This is called Test Focus Field Figure. It's also from 1965. And it was done with spray enamels. And I thought that there was a resemblance between what you do with spray enamels and projection, or film projection, or slide projection, or whatever projection. So this was done thinking of it as a kind of projection that if you move a projection further and further away, it'll get more dim. So there are three projections. This is called Beach, and then Beach Backwards. It's 1963. And I worked on the Walking Woman things from 61 to 67, so this is sort of one of the early ones. And it was painted on both sides of the canvas when it was not unstretched. And then I pressed one side on the other side so that there are traces of the kind of bathing suit in the orange on this side. So it makes a kind of revolving painting. This is another slide piece called Recombinant, which was done more recently, 1992. And it is a little bit related to the corner of Brack and Picasso streets in the show at the power plant. because I became interested in projecting on different surfaces. And in this case, it's a panel that is was cut, so it's kind of incised. And that means that everything that's projected on it, you see these geometric lines. And so I made a number of, all these slides were made for this work to relate and to relate closely and or distantly to the surface that they're projected on. So in this case, one of the slides is a slide of the work itself in the studio, showing the panel on which it's being projected. And this is a piece of cheese which fits perfectly into one part of the panel. This is being shown right now at the AGO. And this is, you know, kind of a collage where all the elements in it fit in the pattern. And this does some interesting things which are sort of indescribable with the space, because you're looking up and you're looking through these marks. And that's a kind of wood structure that fits and doesn't fit. Oh, this is too hard to explain. It's called line drawing with synapse, and it was done recently, 2004. It's, I'll just say, it's made with something that's called electroluminescent panels, and they really are amazing. It's an advertising thing, I guess. But they are light boxes, except they're only about 5 millimeters thick. It's absolutely fantastic. They glow with just like a light box, and the space is so I think I won't try to do this because I want to show you something else. There's two sides to it, and it's actually two photographs of two panels, which were transparent panels with a short circuit. This is called Place Dépôt, and it's also relatively recent, 1998. There are 34 of these sort of suspended frames, 155 by 58 centimeters. And again, it's unfortunate that I don't have images that show people in it, because you have to walk in it to really see what's happening in it. There are lights. There are two lights, one on one side of the wall and one inside the wall on the other way, pointing the other way. So that makes the light go through these. Each one of these things has a different transparency, different color of transparency in it. And so if you're in the thing, you are projected with these colors, and you see through and as you move around, you see through the transparencies, and it keeps on changing. And the projections on the wall, as you can see, are quite complicated and also change when you move around. So it's a very, very variable thing. Because every move will change what you get to see. And that's one wall. And that's how complicated it can get from different positions. Now, if we could just show the CD ones, there are only 4 of them. Is that possible? Then I will have done everything that I've planned to do, and I'm happy actually, but I'll be even happier. Yeah, this was done in 2001. It was in there's a festival I think probably every year or every 2 years called Montréal en Lumière, and I had an idea. I was asked to do something in it, and my idea was to try to illuminate inside a house in as powerfully as possible to make it impossible to actually look at. And the doctors were quite understanding, and they actually rented a portable house, not a trailer, but a real house. And it was put in this park. I think it's Place des Arts. And change, please. So it's just simply that the illumination was really fantastic. You had to kind of glance away to really see it. And change, please. And change. And change. So in a way, it made an exterior kind of art gallery with of the windows, because as you went around the house, but it was really quite extreme. And next, please. This is what it was like inside. And again, everybody was very cooperative, and because I kept on trying to add lights and get it brighter and brighter. Next. And it got pretty hot in there. And it was very cold outside. So, yeah, I wanted to mention light again because in the current show, there's one piece that uses light, the tabletop piece, Serve Deserve, where the conceit is that the food is delivered in the beam, which it does. It is delivered in the beam, but it's a way to include the beam, the projection beam, in the work. I've also got a commission to do what will be a 60-story light work for the Trump Tower, which will be at, or is being built at Bay in Adelaide. So I've worked with light specifically quite a bit, and this interior, it's called, is one example. I think that's everything. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, there's that. Thank you. Thanks.
So thanks so much, Michael, for expanding on the context of the show at the power plant and giving us a small glimpse at everything you've done. That somewhat, I mean, there's a number of relationships there that are quite good to see, and certainly for myself, remind me of some of these previous works. Now we have, are you up to do a few questions?
Give it a try, sure.
Are going to try? Okay, so there is a microphone that will, that is available. So we have some light, because otherwise I don't see you at all. We'll do about 10 to 15 minutes of questions. So if anyone would like to start.
I've got a question.
The microphone.
You seem to be working with windows in the last, let's say, last decade, which I suppose windows operate as a transparency in and of themselves. I just wondered if you could talk about that.
Well, it goes back further than that. There's a piece done in the 50s it's a construction kind of using windows. Well, I guess wavelength features windows too. That's 67. Well, I guess it comes from thinking about framing and how framing is a selection of what you're going to get to see in this bounded area. So it's something that's very important in painting, but especially important in photography. I don't know how to, and well, I guess another thing is working with a camera. Cameras are windows too, and so that they are a kind of framing that one uses to present the framing that one has chosen, so to speak, through a kind of window. It's just, I guess that windows are very important, and I've tried to do things with windows. Yeah.
Yes?
Well, I'm loving the work, thank you.
Thank you.
My question is do you find that as technology progresses and the time passes, does it get easier or harder to create innovative pieces for you?
Well, I've both used things that couldn't be done before by a new technology, but I've also done things where I couldn't find, as I mentioned, the machine to make La Région Centrale. There wasn't such a machine, so I did conceive of a. On the other hand, it was a thrill to find out that you could use a moving image camera and see exactly what you got. Because I had been making films, and when you shoot a film, the film goes to a lab, and 2 or 3 days later you get to see what you shot. And in some cases, at least with my work, and often with most experimental filmmakers or artists, it would be 100 feet, which is a little bit less than 3 minutes. So the arrival of video was similar to Polaroid in that, wow, you could actually see what you shot, and also in Dela, that you could use it for a real-time image and see what it saw. So that's a technological advance that's really, and then things have kept on. I made a quote film called Corpus Callosum, which is 90 minutes, and it's actually a D beta thing. The original is D beta, and you can see it as projected D beta or DVD, or I made a 16mm copy of it too. Anyway, it's something that uses computer manipulation in a way that wasn't possible before. Some kinds of, before with video, it's possible to move a pixel and put it somewhere else where you couldn't do that with film. And in '81, I finished a film called Presents, which I think is being shown in this series, yeah. And in the first part of it, I wanted to do something that squeezed and stretched the image. And I tried doing things with prisms, which did some interesting things. And then I saw something on television where that squeezing and stretching was used as a wipe, to change from one scene to another scene in an ad. So I looked into what that was, and it was an analog, Quantel was the system, that some television station in Toronto could do that. And so I used that to do this squeezing and stretching thing, which is in the first part of Presents. But that interested me in stretching and squeezing. And I started to think about ideas that would just use this stretching and squeezing machine. And then I started to, as I was into a couple of years of making notes about stretching and squeezing, I realized that maybe I could go a little bit further. And say, even in 1990, certain things could be done in computer animation, but they took a lot of time and cost a lot of money to do a few seconds sometimes. So, but I kept on being interested in more and more in the kind of manipulation that was possible. And eventually, through really thick and thin, it was really, I finished Corpus Callosum in 2000, I guess, or maybe it was 2002. But it really took almost 20 years because I started to have the ideas. But so it's something that took advantage of things that couldn't be done before by you know. So I really am affected by these things, and everything changes so fast. Well, in the show. The landscape where condensation is Blu-ray, so it's modern. That's the first time I've used Blu-ray. It wasn't shot with Blu-ray, but it's projected in HD. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So we have a question?
Yeah.
I was just curious, in your films, for example, like The Wind at the Window that's in the current show, or in fact all your films, how do you determine their length? Is it instinct when it's finished, or is there some other determinant? You're obviously playing with time too, so and it's variable, so it's not. So how do you decide it's finished?
Well, well, each one is different, and they're each everything that's in the show is a gallery moving image installation. But because I work differently for cinema situations, it's a different thing to make something that's shown in this sort of a situation, or really in a proper theater, cinema theater, where there are loudspeakers and there's a projection booth and there are seats, and you go there. There's a kind of a social contract that one makes when one goes to the theater. You know that what you're going to see is going to have time involved. It's going to be durations. And so you generously say, I'll go and see this time thing. So some of my things are made that they really shouldn't be seen in a gallery situation. They should be seen as in a cinema theater. For example, La Région Centrale is a cinema theater thing. I would never show that as a gallery work where you come in and glance at it, because it builds. It's a language that you have to learn, or you don't have to, a language that one will learn if one sees the whole thing, and it has a development, and it all adds up in a certain way. So that affects how one would think, or how I think about what the durations things have. I'm trying to think of a way to. The three-language piece, that, cela, dat, is a 15-minute loop. And it is, I think that 15 minutes is doable in a gallery context, that you can stand there. And in fact, the text talks about you standing there and reading it. So, I mean, it could be 20 minutes, that's for sure, but 15 seemed pretty good. And also, every 15 minutes, it changes location. That is, if it's, I mean, I don't know whether you noticed this, but if it's French on one monitor and English on the projection and then Dutch on the other one, at 15 minutes that'll shift. And so each language has 15 minutes on the big screen. But they happen simultaneously. So I think 15 minutes is right for that piece. Whereas Solar Breath, Northern Caryatids, I shot what was happening as long as it was interesting, because I'd been trying to trap that for years. And it turned out, again, this is a video thing. I tried to shoot it on film when it happened many years ago, but that was with a 100-foot roll on a Bolex, and you know, it's still nearly 3 minutes, and that's all. Whereas in this case, I could shoot for an hour straight without having to move the camera, and the gods were on my side. I really was given a wonderful performance. So it could have been longer or shorter, but it has enough variety. Another piece of cosmic luck is the 3 times, I think it is, that you get to see outside fairly clearly. I mean, I didn't want more than that, and that's what I got. And I mean, it was not my doing. So I'm really, actually, the piano piece is related to that Soledad in a way, because I wanted it to be a cycle, and it's about 15 minutes too. That you can stand and see it. You might not understand. It's kind of complicated, so it might take a few viewings to know that it's repeating, but it does. But it's a bit variable. But I mean, it's not. I've been asked that about wavelength. Why is it 45 minutes? Well, it could have been 50, but it ended up being 45. But it couldn't be 2 or 3 minutes. So. Okay.
So do we have other questions? Yes, at the back there.
Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. At the beginning of the show, you said your work is, you generally avoided narrative until recently. I'm wondering why that is.
Recently what? Sorry.
You avoided narrative until recently. I'm wondering.
Well, I think saying avoided is the wrong thing. Perhaps I hope we didn't say that. It's just never been of interest. I've been interested in finding ways to structure durations. Yeah, I'll try that again. I've been trying to find ways to structure durations, and narrative is one of the best, but it really has never interested me that much. I really want to find other ways to move in time. So that's why I sort of exaggerated by saying that it was the only. I mean, some things can be said to be narrative, but I mean, they're really, Sturti really is a narrative. I mean, it really does tell a story, and I've never done that before. But it's really about superimposition as much as the story. So.
Okay, so one more question, maybe? Yes, please.
One aspect of your practice that we haven't really talked about at all is your book production. And I was wondering if, like cover to cover or 56 tree poems, I'm wondering if you would have a few words to say about how you approach some of your book works.
Well, I have been working with trying to use the different grounds that are possible for photography. I mean, some things are on cloth, and the books, especially cover to cover, I think are fairly pure uses of the medium of the book, in that it is made up of these leaves that are bound. You know what a book is. But in cover to cover, I used the recto verso aspect because this is one side and that's the other side. And that's how books are made, or how pages are made. So in cover to cover, one side, the recto side, shows maybe it's me facing the camera, and the other side shows me from behind, but exactly the same size. So it's a bit like I mentioned about in medias res, the piece using the carpet. It's a true experience of the two-dimensionality of photographs, because you have it in your hand, this thin material. 56 tree poems was different, but it's like a kind of collection of engravings. It's all photographs. Perhaps nobody's ever seen it. It's photographs of leafless trees photographed in a fairly black and white way. So it's all cross-hatchings of different kinds, which are all natural. They're photographs, but they look like engravings in some ways, which is bookish, I think. I think that's my answer.
Well, thank you all for coming this evening, and I think we have to say a big thank you to Michael Snow for sharing with us all his work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for coming, really.